Hi everyone. Earlier this year, Polish and American archaeologists digging in the Roman-Egyptian seaport of Berenice Troglodytica at the Red Sea announced an intriguing find of a marble Buddha. In this episode, we shall deal with this Buddha and its rather complicated cultural background. It is a story of military endeavors, cultural encounters, and unexpected religious syncretism in ancient times. I am your host, Martin Eriksson. Welcome to Ancient History. The statue itself is about 70 centimeters high. It wears a Greek himation, the Greek toga, and is standing in counterpose. That is, with one foot slightly in front of the other. Both features are of Western origin. More on the relevance of these features later. The marble statue is in two pieces, where the head has become separated from the body, which is also missing its right side. A lotus flower can be seen next to Buddha. Behind Buddha's head is a glory of radiating light symbolizing Buddha's state of nirvana. If we disregard Siddhartha Gautama himself and the birth of Buddhism sometime around 500 BCE, we can say that this story begins with one of the central singularities of the ancient world, Alexander the Great. As Alexander launched his eastern campaign in 334 BCE with the goal of conquering Persia, he was followed by tens of thousands of Macedonians and Greeks. As he made his way eastwards, he founded new cities or claimed old ones in his name. In these places he left garrisons, sometimes of several thousands, with Greek heritage. Both soldiers and civilians following the campaign. It is the spread of Greek culture over this vast empire that gave birth to Hellenism as a cultural expression. And hence, far in the east, Greek and local culture came to influence each other. Most important became perhaps a city usually called Alexandria in the Caucasus. Today it is better known as Bagram in Afghanistan, whose strategic location on the passes through the mountains of Hindu Kush allowed it to control the trade routes between west and east. At Alexander's death in Babylon in 323 BCE, the empire, some 4,000 kilometers across, stretched somewhat simplified from Delphi to Indus. The empire soon collapsed into smaller fragments, and in the east a series of states would follow. The Seleucid Empire, 312 to 64 BCE, the Greco-Bactrian Kingdom, 256 to about 125 BCE, and the Indo-Greek Kingdom, about 200 BCE to 10 CE. In these frontier lands, a phenomenon called Greco-Buddhism came into being. And in time, Buddhism would be the dominant religion in the region. In this process, two rulers are important. One is the mythical Ashoka, who ruled over a central Indian kingdom called Maurya between 273 and 232 BCE. He expanded his realm to include the areas around Hindu Kush, and later also came to convert to Buddhism. There are several written sources from his reign telling us about his encounters with the Greeks. The second ruler had the more Greek-sounding name Menander. He ruled between 165 and 130 BCE in an Indo-Greek kingdom, with its capital located in Sagala, at the foot of the Himalayas on the eastern side of Hindu Kush. Menander also came to convert to Buddhism, hence strengthen it in the area. Greek and Indian culture, inevitably, now melted together in some ways. The syncretism that took shape between Greek religion and Buddhism soon found a natural branch in art, in a way that came to have crucial importance for Buddhistic iconography. Most apparent was this Greek Buddhistic movement in the Gandhara region. In the beginning, Buddhism had been what is called aniconic. That is, Buddha had only been pictured in his absence. It could be in the form of an empty throne, footsteps, or a Bodhi tree. In contrast, It is in the Greco-Buddhist tradition that Buddha is first depicted as a man. These early pictures of Buddha hence have apparent Greek and Hellenistic cultural traits, both in how they are dressed and in the way they are sculptured. The before-mentioned counterpose is clearly visible in some examples. Style was not the only Western export. Even mythological symbols found their way into Buddhism. The most easily recognizable of these were the Greek hero Heracles. He soon became exchangeable with the Bodhisattva Vairapani, the guardian of Buddha, known in Japan as Shokongushin. In early art, he is often clearly recognizable with his club and his lion skin, as can be seen in this relief. To underline this cultural coming together, there are finds of Buddhistic texts in Greek from around 200 BCE, and the Indian king Ashoka had edicts made in both Greek and Aramaic. Naturally, the cultural exchange was not one way, but it is harder to find Buddhist expressions that has found their way out west. Some have tried to tie Buddhist philosophy to Greek skepticism, but without convincing results. A possible example is the Greek philosopher Pyrrhon, who travelled together with Alexander's campaign. He came into contact with Indian gymnosophists, but it cannot be proven that these were Buddhists. And in any case, Greek skepticism was already evolving at this time. Perhaps more significantly, and of ultimate importance for our statue, I haven't forgotten it, is people of Buddhist faith who travelled along the trade routes. And Ashoka, according to himself, sent Buddhist missionaries as far as Syria and Egypt. And we know from Roman scribes that the Indian kings sent embassies to the Roman emperors. One of the most peculiar meetings of this kind is told about by Nicolaus from Damascus, Strabo, Cassius Dio, and even Horace. They tell about an Indian embassy sent by a king called Pandion visiting Augustus while he was at a winter resort on Samos in the Aegean. Together with them travelled a man called Sarmanochegas, whose name probably came from the word Sramana, an Indian ascetic tradition also found in Buddhism. Sarmanochegas later travelled to Athens, where he for unknown reasons burned himself to death, reminding us of much later Buddhist cases of self-immolation. Now, Berenice Troglodytica was during the 1st centuries CE one of the main ports for the trade in spices, ivory, cloth, and other valuable goods bound for Rome, even war elephants. The arriving ships came from Arabia and the by now Buddhist areas in India and Sri Lanka. The statue of Berenice is not unique in itself. There are, for example, gravestones with Sanskrit texts found in Alexandria. But it is the most obvious Buddhist relic found from and in ancient Egypt, so to speak. Several factors make it interesting. First of all, the find was made in an Isis temple, which means that this was not a lost goods, but a used idol, probably erected by Indian seafarers. Close to the statue was also found a text in Sanskrit, the old Indian language. However, it does not seem to be connected to the statue itself. It does, however, tell us that the temple was used regularly by Indian visitors. Other finds, such as Greek texts, Roman and Indian coins, the latter from the Satavahana kingdom, tells us that the temple was in use all the way up until the early 4th century CE. The Buddha, however, seem to be much older than these finds, but the initial report does not tell how old. And more interestingly, the figurine is made from marble quarried in a location close to Constantinople. Hence, it is not from India nor from the areas surrounding Hindu Kush. On the contrary, the statue was most likely made on location in Berenice or in Alexandria proper. Judging from the level of the sculpturing, we can conclude that the artisan was familiar with Buddhist iconography, or at least had an original to work from. So what is the conclusion then? It seems we will have to challenge our preconceived conceptions. In Roman times, in the Egypt of Ra and Anumis, in Roman times, in the Egypt of in Roman times of the in Roman times, in the Egypt of Re and Anubis, there were not only Buddhist travelers, but also statues and people who venerated them. They were not many, but they were there. These statues, in the shape that they had, was much a result of Alexander's campaign in the East and the cultural era of Hellenism that came with it. Hence, the statue is interesting not only because of its shape and its place of origin, but also because it puts our focus on Greco-Buddhism, the result of early exchange between Hellenism and the still quite young Buddhism. Hi again. If you like this episode, please leave a comment, hit that like button and share a link with your friends. And don't forget to subscribe. And if you would like to help me make even better documentaries about the past in the future, please consider joining me at Patreon. I've put a link to my site in the description below. Thank you for watching.